folks. Welcome into week 3. Brady, we got to do the preview indoors. A little windy out there.
A little windy, a little hot, like the air conditioner and the controlled climate, as they say.
Yeah, well,
Nice.
the long sleeves probably weren't a very smart choice for me, but, I digress. Let's move on here. All right, let's jump right into it. Let's go north, head to Jay. The Royals taking on Snead. Snead's 2-0. 2 impressive wins so far, Brady. But I think the Royals can get it done. I've got faith. I picked them. You didn't.
No, I didn't.
Let's go ahead and point that out. But the Royals, with the running game, with the passing game with Connor Weeks, under 2 weeks under Kent Smith, know his program, know what they're supposed to be doing, can execute it properly. I like the Royals to go in there and get themselves a win. But one game we do agree on, Northview, staying to the east of us for games this week, going to Chipley, a team that's in that rural division, but maybe outsizes Northview just a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look at, they were in the same district with Mariana and Catholic and all those teams last year, so they're enrollment-wise, they're probably like a 3A or 4A, but since they're in one of those rural areas, they are a rural team, a 1A team. And receiving votes in that 1A poll, I think they're right around 6th right now. So this is a good gauge, a good barometer for Northview. After beating Mariana last week, they get a chance to kind of see a team that's in their classification and a team that is obviously getting some respect in the poll for them. Right. And they get to go on the road and do it, which they haven't, they've done all year long so far. They've been on the road every game so far.
Right. And we'll go from 2 undefeated teams to an undefeated team against a winless team. Tate traveling to Woodham Middle. They're going to take on West Florida High, a team that has looked fantastic this year, out-athleting people. And that's something you couldn't have said about West Florida High a couple years ago. Is it Harry Lee's system? Is it the athletes that they have in there this year? Hey, who knows, who cares? But it looks like the Jaguars are poised to maybe go 3-0 here.
Moving on to a team that West Florida beat last week to get to 2-0. The Washington Wildcats go on the road to take on Choctaw. We saw Choctaw here in week 1. They played Catholic in a game that was a thriller that they ended up stealing from Catholic in the last minutes. Washington's been very close in 2 games. They were playing with Navarre for 3 quarters and ended up losing 28-7. And last week, a 12-7 loss to West Florida. Washington's close. They're not quite there yet. They got to go on the road looking for their first win this year.
Yeah, and I think if they can find that role for Dejan Funderburk, I think they can move forward. But until they get that quarterback situation figured out and how they're going to use Funderburk effectively, it could be a tough year for the Wildcats. Another team at 1-1 is Milton, and they had one kind of taken out from under them last week. Didn't have the number 1 quarterback, didn't have their number 2 quarterback, and then it comes down. They get the game tied up, but extra point.
Extra point always gets you every time.
Yeah, so that's tough. If they can find a way to get to the ball to their playmakers, if they can get Paul Young back from injury, he hasn't played yet this year. This Milton team could be one of the surprise teams of the year. They could be one of those teams that goes out and gets 7, 8 wins and challenges for a playoff spot. It'll be interesting to see how that works out in this District 1 6A.
Yeah, not scoring a lot of points right now, but they'll get around to that when their offense kind of starts clicking. Another team not scoring a lot of points right now is Scambia, taking on Rutherford this week at home. Scambia last week 32-0 loss against Crestview, a team that Scambia's just kind of struggling right now to find an identity. They have all those big guys, and yet they're not being able to move the football. They have a lot of sophomores in the backfield. They're taking on a Rutherford team that, coming off that win over Milton, probably feeling pretty good about themselves. Right. But Scambia's at home. They have a chance to kind of right the ship a little bit right before district has started. This is kind of an important game for them to kind of get. They don't want to get to 0-3 starting into that brutal district,
Right. And this could be a measuring stick game for them. What do you have going forward? So, that'll be very interesting for Escambia. Another measuring stick game, and maybe an unfair measuring stick. Catholic going to PHS. PHS, arguably the best team in the area. Definitely one of the top 2 or 3 teams. And they're going to take on this young Catholic team who has shown when the going gets tough, they can win it, but they can also lose it. So, you don't know really what to expect there. Maybe they're overmatched here with this PHS matchup. Would have been nice to see this game last year.
Yeah.
Would have been great to see all those D1 kids going against these PHS kids. But new season, we'll see what happens. Cody Henry, he's going to have to make quick decisions because that PHS defensive line will be in the backfield. And you see if they can get enough going in the running game. That's the thing. Navarre last week, 4 rushes for positive yardage. Mm-hmm. They ran some quarterback draws and things like that were somewhat effective. See if Catholic can use those this week.
Yeah. talking about your measuring stick. That's like a yardstick against a ruler in that game. You got PHS with the tradition. Both of them very very good, but PHS just has that size and speed all over the field. The last two games, obviously, I have a game of the week still, but one which we feel is almost as good as a game of the week. Pace at Navarre. A lot of history between these two teams. Obviously not in the same district anymore, so this is a big game for them. It doesn't count towards that playoff, but Pace kind of remembers what happened last year. Navarre knocked them out of the playoffs with a win at Pace. And Pace gets to come into Navarre. Both teams coming off of tough losses. It'll be interesting to see how these two teams bounce back from those two games. Pace had a game where they were leading and ended up, at the end losing it. And Navarre was a game where they were trailing early on and then coming back, kind of had a late-minute run. Right. So it's just a good matchup and one of those games that we could see, in Week 11, Week 12, because both of these teams, you got to feel like both of them are going to be in their district, their respective district hunt.
Yeah, they both definitely have a chance to make the postseason. Would either match up in the first round as a runner-up and a champion, or in the second round as two teams who advance through the first round. So that'd be very interesting. Last week, one thing about Navarre is when things started to get maybe out of hand and PHS took a commanding lead over them, those players are on the sideline. Hey, this game's not over. Hey, let's go ahead and fight through this. And that's key for teams.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of teams give up, and Navarre didn't do that. They fought, and this game last year is the game where everyone went, oh wow, Navarre's for real.
Yeah, kind of arrived on the scene there.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, they went and beat Pace, took that playoff spot from them, and man, everybody was just like, oh, they're legitimate, and then they advanced all the way to the region final. So, very interesting matchup there. It'd be interesting to see how Navarre does against them without Colton Kane. Colton Kane really, the leader of that team last year. Not the player of the week, more the game of the week. Niceville comes to Pine Forest after stealing that game away from Pace, 14-13 last week, 2 touchdowns in the last 7 minutes of the game. But against a Pine Forest team who wants some revenge after they feel like the game got stolen from them last year when they fell by a field goal.
Yeah, and Pine Forest coming off a couple shootout wins, so to speak, 50-34 last week, and I think it was 42-21 or something like that the week before. Obviously, the offense is taking care of itself. Rashad Lee has done a great job as the quarterback. I mean, he rushed for 200 yards last week. Also had the kick return, and ended up making a great play on defense, running a guy down from behind who recovered a fumble. But this will be a different game for them than they've seen the last 2 weeks, because Niceville's going to come in there and not really slow the pace down, but basically make it more of a methodical, low-scoring defensive game. I mean, you know that Niceville's going to try to slow it down as far as the tempo, try to minimize the number of plays that Pine Forest runs. So the key is going to be Pine Forest getting off the field on defense, not giving up those long drives, because Niceville, that's what they're going to do. They're going to want to just kind of hold the football as long as they can. So it's going to be interesting to see, Pine Forest finally playing a team from inside the state. Does it change things? Coach Pollard said it didn't, but we'll see. Does it change things as far as how the players are kind of get up for that game? Because you got to think, you played a team from Mississippi and Georgia in the first 2 weeks. You don't really care about those games as much as a team that you lost to last year.
Right, and like you say, these teams have history. These teams play each other in the playoffs. These teams play each other during the regular season every year. And both these teams use each other to get better. Yeah. And that's the thing about this game is, of course you want to get better in the other games. You want to beat the Greenville Westons. You want to beat the Columbia Georgias. You want to beat these teams. But this shows you where you are.
Yeah.
I mean, it tells you where you're at. Can we compete in the postseason? This is the game where Pine Forest is going to find out. We're going to find out if that defense can shore itself up. We're going to find out if that offensive line can handle a top-tier Class 6A defense in Niceville. Mm-hmm. And, if they can't, then you have the rest of the season, the entire district schedule, to get yourself together. Yeah. If you can, you know where you are, and you get ready to build on that.
Not to mention that crowd, crowd factor. Niceville's going to bring some people. You got to think Greenville didn't bring anybody. And I don't know what the atmosphere was like when they played Jonesboro, but Niceville's going to travel. They've always traveled pretty well, so the atmosphere there at Pine Forest is going to be like a playoff-type atmosphere. Right. And that's going to be interesting to see how all those juniors from Pine Forest kind of step up and rise to the occasion in that game.
Yeah, one thing Pine Forest has that no one else has, though, that band.
Yeah, that band. Still haven't seen them. I'll get to see them one day this year.
I've been telling you, you got to see that band, and so you'll have that. You'll have radio stations galore. You'll have TV cameras on the sidelines. Very interesting game. That is our News Radio 1620 News Journal game of the week. So I'll be at that one. I'll join Paul Chestnut pregame and at halftime. we'll call down to the sports desk, get some scores at halftime, so check that out on AM 1620. But I'm Jason Blakeney. This is Brady Aymond. We will see you tomorrow where we tell you everything that I said right and Brady said wrong. So
That'll be wonderful.
Thanks for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow.